Daniela, thank you so much for having me. What an amazing venue.
Thank you, Fit, for having me. Yeah, it's a quite interesting place. It's the Innovation Park of Buenos Aires.
So Innovation Park Buenos Aires, and this is the Immersivity Center,
Exactly.
and where you guys, Aquit, are based.
Yeah, we are based in Chile, the scientific team, and the management team is in Buenos Aires. So we are here at the space. It's Innovation Park, where we have the co-working space, and there's also a laboratory with a co-working. And well, it's a wonderful place in which we have like a very interesting community of startups from all around Buenos Aires. We went through a biotech accelerator in Argentina that's called REDX. REDX, it's an accelerator and like a Tinder for scientific products and entrepreneurs. I met there with my scientific team that's from Chile, and after we got selected, they got selected as scientists. I got selected as an entrepreneur, and each year 20 entrepreneurs and 20 scientists come together to a program called Ignite. So there we matched, and well, that's part of the explanation why we are from different countries. And most of the, not most, but a big number from the starters of Grade X are here in this innovation park, the ones that are from Argentina.
Did you find that being in this environment is motivating and it changes your approach in any way?
Yeah, and it's very important when you are. When I started working here, I was the only person from the management team, and it's hard to work alone at home. So, but because my scientific team was in Chile, so it's very important to share this very, very difficult journey we are in with other people. Yeah, it's energizing.
Energizing, yeah. You can compare notes and
Yeah,
share good moments, bad moments. Yes.
and all
Trying
that.
to- All right, I'm gonna go back to 2001 because you graduated in economics in 2001 here in Buenos Aires. And that year, Argentina had one of the worst economic crises in its history.
Yes.
What was that like?
Wow. It was a moment in which really it felt like as Argentina was no longer going to exist, almost like that, like, it's very, the moment in which you finish your career, then like the minute you think that you were like the rest of your life is starting, and at the same time you see like no future, it was like a dystopic, like Black Mirror moments, And most of my colleagues from university want to do masters abroad, and I wanted to start working, but I didn't know what to. I didn't want to be do research in economics, and I was not attracted to working at a corporation. So I really was wondering what to do, and at that specific moments, it was very hard to figure out. So I had like an artistic side of myself. I had been painting, writing, and I organized with a group of people, a group of artists, a group to bring performances into Buenos Aires, into places of Argentina, art performances. So I brought the performance of an American photographer called Spencer Tunick. He brought this photos use like 500, 1,000 or more people naked. So I organized that in Buenos Aires, and for me,
It's a lot of people to organize.
you can imagine. In like the first time I did fundraising in my life, I did for that product. You can imagine 2001. And I'm calling the airlines and saying, yeah, I'm going to bring an artist to Argentina. Where are they? And I need your ticket planes. And yeah, it was hard, but it was very, very fun, interesting. And I learned a lot. But yeah, we had 80 like media from all over the world. It was amazing. And very big event, like in Obelisco. You know, you've already been there, like the Obelisco, Buenos Aires. So it was at the Obelix there, and it was amazing. And that moment, I learned that I wanted to do to work with cultural management.
Okay. And did you consider to leave Argentina before that point?
Yeah, I was considering. I even had a plane ticket bought to London.
To London? Oh, there you go. You didn't take it?
I didn't take it. Well, in the meantime, I fall in love with my current husband. I'd say it was a good decision. And yeah, and like I changed everything. I said, okay, like I want to do what I want, like what makes me happy. And I decided to stay and to like find out a way in a different thing, very different from the one that I had studied, in an atmosphere that was very complicated.
So even in 2001, that sounds like a very entrepreneurial approach in terms of being flexible and, you know, innovating, finding a way.
Yeah, and like very trying to adapt to the conditions, to the situation. Yeah. Well, in Argentina, it's something that we are kind of all entrepreneurs. Like we, in a way, in a sense, because we experience crisis, and we experience kind of this cyclic crisis, and you have to adapt, and you have to be highly flexible to survive. You know, even being like in terms of having a privileged education as the one I had, you have to adapt all the time because things change. And at that time, in 2001, I couldn't find a job. Was really, really hard at that time. You know, like when you feel okay, like people will be waiting in line for me. You know, it didn't happen. So yeah, but well, I chose that. But I'm very happy. Recently, I read something that has to do with you can never know what would have happened because you can't compare that alternative life, you know, to the one that you had. So just choose something, stick to that, and make the best of it. So that was my philosophy, you know, like it's impossible to compare.
Yeah, and it doesn't do any good to you.
No, and like there's all the things that would have happened if I would have pursued you know, the line. You can't guess what all the things that would add to that.
No, there's so many variables, so many unexpected things.
So no, I'm very happy with that. But yeah, I'm used to changing things, and from that, what I learned is that, and even in terms of the things that we do, like you can change like as many times as you want, as long as you are really convinced or you really want to do what you are pursuing. Like this more rigid idea that we have of, or used to have, I know that now it changed, but of one career I have to pursue and like to start, I don't know, in kindergarten, thinking about it and, you know, putting hours to that. It's like, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Do you think it's just a case of it doesn't work like that anymore?
I think it doesn't work like that for most of because of the world economy. Yeah. Basically, it's very hard to find. Even in Japan, I think nowadays they're kind of, you know, places like you are used to start a work there or a position and get till you're, I don't know, 70 years old in the same job. They are kind of rethinking that system. But the world economy like needs people, like things are going so fast and work is evolving so fast that you need to redesign your career every, I don't know, 5 to 10 years at least. So if you are too attached to something, like you will need to rethink that and to give another directions, or at least to do something about it. So I think that I'm quite happy that I found that, because like I'm Gen X, you know, Generation X. It's more like, you know, more this idea of you have to do something for the rest of you have to choose well. Yeah. You know, when you're 18 years old, you have to choose the path and, you know, the career and like what you're going to study and stick to that for the rest of your life. So, yeah.
You think being from Argentina gave you an advantage in that sense because there's the element of unpredictability and constant change that you have to find your feet again.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because like you come to, you make friends with risk at some point. Like, okay, it's like that. You can do anything about it. You just have to accept, like, you have to embrace risk. If you don't embrace risk, you suffer a lot in a country like ours, Like, okay, it's like that. And sometimes like, and it's not like this, it's not like always up and steady, and no, it's unpredictable. And well, most people like learned that from COVID, I think. Like we had like a world trauma, with COVID. And like you wanted to do, you had to do so many things, and COVID stopped everything. So you can imagine if that would happen in a place like at least every 4 years. If you interview people in Argentina, like each 1 year, like they will always tell you almost every year, yeah, we're in the middle of a crisis. Like we live in crisis. Like you can live. It's like your way of life. When you say it all the time.
Speaking of change and unpredictability, I was looking at the career you've built before Aquit. So you built a remarkable career spacing from product development, marketing, communication, and media. Do you find that developing and marketing a product in the blue economy is in any way different from doing so in other sectors?
In some way, in some kind of the things that you need to do are pretty similar, because basically you have to understand the customer, who the customer is, the clients. You need to understand how are you going to like develop the product, how are you going to produce it, regulations in each country. It's not that different. Blue economy, I found, has something very interesting with on the case of aquaculture.
Yeah.
As you produce mostly in public spaces, that is the sea, you have to really take into account the social license
That's interesting. Yeah.
in order to do that.
So it's not just you and your idea. You have to confront and negotiate with the public space.
And you have to take that into account.
Yeah.
It's not that, it's just a plus to take into account the community. You have to think about like all the things that are going on, and it's an industry like aquaculture in this case. It's very scrutinized. It's much more younger than other animal farming industries. So there's a lot of like the public opinion is very, very hard on it, and then the regulations are very hard on it. So you have to be very careful in aquaculture on what are you doing, how are you doing it, and it needs to be sustainable. It's kind of mandatory. It's not that in other industries you can't, but you have sometimes a little bit more space to do that, or to have some practices that are maybe not the best ones. In aquaculture, I think it's very difficult to do that without consequences.
Do you feel there's maybe a public perception that is negative toward aquaculture, and you have to sort of fight that back and prove yourself with more scrutiny that you would in other sectors?
Yeah, I believe that most of the basically aquaculture producers feel so attacked, or like with public opinion, that they decided as a strategy, most of them, to stay silent as a strategy. Like where I'm not going to talk, about what we're doing, because every time we try to promote this, we get attacked. So I think that strategy doesn't help the industry as a whole, because you need also people to speak up and say, we are and like, come here and see what I'm doing, like be as transparent as you can, and invite people to come and to talk about it openly. But of course, I understand you're afraid of, being kicked again.
Yeah.
But there are some initiatives like what's Fed by Blue NGO that has released this what's the name? Hope in the Water. I think that's the series.
Okay. We'll put it in the show notes so people can check it out.
But I think it's the name. And like, for example, stories from aquaculture farmers, like from all over the world, that it's like the side B or from conspiracy, and all this.
Oh, interesting.
All those kind of documentaries and
Paint a negative picture.
yeah, and like they kind of, you can do anything here and it's very dangerous and there's kind of a conspiracy, all around the world. And yeah, and I think that this industry needs more of that, because we like the need for food is growing, consumption is growing, the need for seafood is growing. And since 2024, more than 50% of the seafood comes from aquaculture. So it was the first time in history that aquaculture was larger than wild fish. So the fisheries basically industry. So what you need is like to be smarter enough, like do aquaculture in the best way, the most sustainable way, and the most efficient way you can, because like where is that food going to come, that fish going to come? And it's very high value protein, very healthy protein, and it's one of the protein with the least carbon footprint in the world.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that you still have to find alternatives to produce things that are also sustainable. And of course, you have like cultivated meat. It's very interesting. But till we have that in a cost-efficient way, we will still rely on aquaculture.
So I'm going a bit on a tangent now, but do you believe that aquaculture can be done in a truly sustainable way?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've been to some facilities that are amazing, that are really, that take care of the fish, that when they want the fish not to be stressed, so they release, some kind of, liquid to de-stress the fish when it's going to be changed from a tank to another tank. They really take care. There's very strict protocols to manage fish. And there are very humane ways to kill them. That's the stunning methods. And yeah, there's a lot of things that you can do that in a humane way.
Yeah. So it's perhaps a communication issue, the fact that all of this doesn't seem to have gone out into the public, into the world, because, I'll give you a stupid example, but I was at this event last night here in Buenos Aires, and I was talking to this lovely chap, Jose, and he was basically asking me about the trip and asking me about what I'm doing, and I was telling him about aquaculture and how it's an exciting place to be, and rightly so. He was a bit confused. He was like, "Wait, isn't aquaculture bad?" And so I tried to explain what I've seen through my podcast, and he said, "Oh, I'm surprised because I have never seen any signal of aquaculture being done sustainably." And that made me think, especially now what you said, that perhaps there is a wall, there is a gap in communication and informing the public.
Yeah, definitely.
About what's going on.
Yeah, and I think that it's very understandable why, if you are aquaculture farmer and you have been criticized as much, you find it hard to expose yourself and to tell, like you try to hide, like, okay, yeah, not make waves, let's say, in a little way. But at the same time, it's needed from the industry. I think someone should, the things that I told you about, Fed by Blue, and Hope in the Water, like those things that really showcase how things are being done, and that's all things. And at the same time, if you have sushi, you have salmon, for example, in your sushi, and at the same time you criticize aquaculture, where do you think that salmon is coming from? You have to be at least consistent.
Yeah.
Because, okay, if you decide not to have any fish at all,
or any meat,
or
for
any
that
meat.
matter.
And
Because
and in the case of antibiotics, the thing that we work with, antibiotics is very intensively used in animal farming, but not only in aquaculture. It used to be. In fact, poultry is huge. And the idea of using preventive antibiotics that's sterile, for to avoid like the chicken getting sick.
so these are not animals that are sick and need antibiotics. They are just animals that are getting a chronic dose of antibiotics for preventative
Exactly.
and for improvement in production.
Exactly. That's called like subtherapeutic amounts.
Yeah.
It's not the amount that needs to kill an infection, but it's like very low dose of antibiotics all the time. That's used to be, and still in some parts is, a very common practice in the poultry industry. And like chicken is the thing that we most eat. So if you say that, like you shouldn't eat meat at all. So, and that wouldn't happen in Argentina. I can guarantee you that, we're not going.
That's the point. That's the point.
In Buenos Aires, we all eat meat. So
a religion. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a religion. Yeah, the most similar thing to a religion is that. So if you eat meat, okay, so you have to at least think a little bit more about your own consistency or your own values. But at the same time, Argentina is the first place in the world that banned salmon aquaculture.
Completely. So there is
Completely.
no salmon aquaculture in Argentina.
In Tierra del Fuego, that's the southest province of Argentina, it was banned, I think, like 4 or 5 years ago. I don't like several years ago, and now they are talking again. How to do that, of course, sustainably and start again. But the thing is that when you and it's interesting because I've been to Punta Arenas in Chile. That's in the Estrecho de Magallanes. It's just kind of the other side. From Chile, you see the place in Argentina that's banned. And you see in Chile how they are producing very sustainably because you have there very low temperatures. So you don't need to use, it's not as hard to avoid using antibiotics in that place.
Because it's so south and
It's
so
south,
cold.
the temperature is so low.
Yeah.
Compared to the other centers that infections occur like less frequently. So you don't need to use antibiotics there as much as in other sites. I know that some sites even got organic certification in salmon nearby. So you see that there's a place just right to the right of that place,
Your neighbors.
the neighbors
They can
that
do
we are like their neighbors, we banned salmon farming.
Yeah.
And at the other side, you have organic certified salmon. So there's a way to do that in a sustainable way. Of course, taking care, using the site the correct amount of time, and then leaving it rest to rebuild the seabed and to have like there's lots of parameters like do you have to take into account. But it's not necessary that you are going to to farm salmon and to destroy. Even there's a lot of projects that work with seaweed with the communities, to rebuild the seabed, so it can be then sustainably. And I think it's an opportunity because when you have an industry as new as aquaculture, in a sense, like in industrial sense, you can use all the technology that has been developed and all the knowledge that has been developed to do it properly.
So we're going to get to Aquit and the technology very soon. Before that, I wanted to sort of explain what looks like a gap, because for somebody that looks at your that doesn't know your story, they look at your CV and they see that somewhere around 2021 you went from the solid, somewhat traditional career, and then you switched to becoming the CEO of this very innovative ocean biotech startup. And I know that that's not the full story, right? What are we missing here? What happened?
Working, I was since 2006. I had been working in public policy, and I was the director of the National Reading Program of Argentina. I directed a program that gave a library of 20 books to each family that received a social housing, a house from the social housing programs. So that was life-changing for me. And it was great to have to work with public policy and to see all this lives change. Really, they were the first books that entered the houses. And so it was a very, very good responsibility to edit this sidewalk and publish that. So all these years, it was an amazing experience, but also it's hard to work in politics. And after 10 years, I think it was I was done. It was an interesting cycle in my life. But then I worked as deputy of the, it's in English, it's the community media direction.
Yep.
And I was part of it. Okay, I'm done. And I decided I wanted to do something new, definitely new. I had this opportunity to work at an Italian company that's one of the largest that works with the vegetable extracts in the world. And it has also subsidiary in Argentina. And I kind of had the opportunity to work in several products, working very next to the presence of the company. And yeah, it was it was an opportunity. Those opportunities that I'm a very curious person, so I got that opportunity from my network, and it was something that opened me, my way into working with biotechnology, because I worked with biologists there. One of the products this company has is prebiotic that improves the microbiome, the intestinal microbiome in animals. That's when I learned about poultry and the poultry industry and antibiotic resistance. And what I did is translate that into, for humans, all those, what you would say preclinical trials, trials with animals to humans. And I directed a COVID trial with 143 patients working with biologists from Argentina, from Italy, and from the United States, on learn about microbiome, antibiotic resistance, and the importance of, working with basically using science to build a product, and to develop a program was amazing.
And that was new to you?
Completely new. I've never done that. In the past, I had other projects. I had a publishing house.
Yes.
I had even a luxury design product with a designer who was my partner and friend, and but I've never had anything to do with biology, and I was really surprised by the impact we had then. There were people that had chronic problems for 10 years and went through this trial and got cured. And everybody wanted to talk to me. They called me doctor. I said, please don't call me doctor. I'm going to go to jail, But I ended up deciding on the amount of, pills they got. And because I ended up having a say in the clinical protocols, in the patents, in which was the composition of the product, because we had to balance what it was good for the treatment, but also what made sense in regulatory terms in Argentina and in Italy as well. So for this product. So, I learned a lot from that. And I said, I want to do this. I want to do this and I want to have an impact. And I want to make something, let's say, from very innovative to have an impact. Yeah. And that's where I came across GreedX.
Right. Back to where we started.
and met my partners and built Aquit.
Right. And that's how you got here, basically.
Exactly.
Okay. If we look at what your company is trying to achieve, is essentially, correct me if I'm wrong, a world where it is possible to farm fish without using antibiotics, which are, as we said, largely used today. To any outsiders, this might sound like a moonshot. What made you believe in this venture to the point of investing your time, your career, to the point that you did?
Well, first of all, I think that my team, my partners are amazing, are very, very solid scientists, and they know what you're doing. And they proved to me that they found something that's really kind of groundbreaking. And I've seen we validated it. They showed me all the validations. I understood them. So there's something that's a very different approach to the one that are being used. And at the same time, I really believe that together we can, even though it's hard, it's not an easy path. We can convince farmers to adopt this product one by one. And I see these that combined with the public opinion and the pressure to be more sustainable, I think that we can get there, like with a very cost-efficient product. And I think that pressure and that need to be sustainable at the same time, I think we can get there.
And, with a product like yours and the technology that's behind it, presumably it requires a big effort in terms of research and development, meaning time and money. What have been the key moves that you've done in getting other people to believe in the project and invest?
So I believe that, we had been working with laboratories and companies that believe in what we are doing. Now we are working on the second largest salmon company in Chile that's called Multi-X, and work for a pilot for next year. So I think that they understand what we're doing and they really want to work with us. So we kind of onboarded very strategic partners that are able to pilot what we're doing and to adopt it at large scale. So I think that that's something important for the people that is investing in us. And also what they say is that investors at early stage, they say that they invest in a team. So you must have solid science, like something that that you prove that it has very, very high chance of working very well at scales, can be scalable. And at the same time, you must prove to have a very strong team. That I believe that the word for that has grit. That combination of passion and persistence. And I think that when you dig into my partners and me, I think that you find some evidence of that, like very stubborn in the good sense. Like we go because we believe in what you're doing.
And you can back it up with the science and the facts.
Exactly.
Right. I've got to ask you this. I heard a funny story about you trying, it sounds like it was a pivotal moment and you attempted to be in two places at once.
I was it was the October 2nd, 2023, when I had to...
You definitely remember.
Yeah. I had to pitch in Saint John, Canada, the Responsible Seafood Innovation Award, because we were finalists there, and I had to pitch in front of the audience. Like it was even Gerald Cook, one of the the founders of aquaculture, salmon aquaculture, and like very, very important audience there. And at the same time, I had the demo day of a program, a biotech accelerator I was doing in Chile, and
very far.
But it was the same time zone. At the same time.
Exactly the same time.
Exactly the same time, because Saint John, Canada and Chile had the same time zone.
All right. Of course.
So they were very far apart, but the same time, the time zone was the same. So there I had to record my pitch for the Chilean accelerator. And I was live. So when I was there in Canada, the people voted live. So I had at that moment, we won there, and I was so happy there, excited, because we won the Responsible Seafood Innovation Award.
Okay, so the audience got to vote live as you were after your pitch.
Exactly. I had to show a video. I had to do a pitch, show a video, and I had two other competitors, and they had to vote there. So they voted, and I won there. And at the same time, I was like, okay, I was kind of disconnected, from
Yeah,
that.
this is done.
Okay, I'm done for the day. And I checked with my partners and I say, okay, tell me what happened in Chile.
Yeah.
And they told me we won. We won in Chile. And they sent me the video in which they said the winners are, and Aquit was first place. So I think something must have happened that day for us because it was too much at the same time. Yeah.
That's incredible. Do you feel that aquaculture is a difficult space to innovate?
Aquaculture, I think that any farming industry is difficult in the sense that you have some practices that are very kind of ingrained and kind of there's a way to do things. And it's not easy to change, to find people with a mindset, open to innovation in general, like in animal farming in general, in any industry, like you see that.
Like a conservative approach?
Yeah, but I believe that compared to other more kind of technological industries and more used to innovation and are seeking for innovation or need innovation all the time, their industry is more established. They know how to do things. But I believe that in the case of aquaculture, I would say compared to other animal farming industries, I see that there's an interest in innovation. And also in the case of the salmon industry, there's a size of the companies that allow them to have a research team and an innovation team. And as I think it also has something to do with that Norway, that's a very kind of technophilic country, let's say. It's and very developed in that sense, has developed lots of technology for aquaculture, for salmon aquaculture.
Down here in Argentina and Chile, you get a big influence from what Norway is doing.
I know that definitely in Chile, Argentina and aquaculture is very nascent, let's say, in the way, in that size. You have trout. That's a couple of big projects of trout projects that are.
So trout is not banned.
No. Trout
Only
is
salmon.
not only salmon and fish nets, like in open sea. But trout, you have a trout industry, that a very important trout industry, and it's growing. And you have very important fisheries in Chubut, like in the Patagonia. Even I was in Norway and I saw a dish that said Argentinian wild shrimp. And I was, oh my God, I'm in Norway and they're publicizing, Argentinian. We had a very, very, very good quality of fish here. Yeah. But aquaculture is still nascent. So if you ask about aquaculture in Argentina, most people wouldn't know. But in Chile, as it's the second largest economic activity after copper minery, they will know. They will know about agriculture. Yeah. But in Argentina, it's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it's
It's not something that people know. And if they know something negative.
Yeah, as we were saying earlier.
Like Jose that you know about, like they don't know anything, but they know that, or there are two things, the pigments and the antibiotics. The astaxanthin, that's the pigment that it's used for a salmon. That is, they use a synthetic pigments, not natural astaxanthin. And you know about antibiotics.
Yeah. Speaking of, that's a really nice segue into the science behind your product. If you could explain it.
Yeah, of course.
Bear in mind, the audience, they tend to be ocean entrepreneurs and innovators, so feel free to go as detailed as you like. The audience are smart people that they're keen to learn all the ins and outs.
Okay, that's great to know. So my partners saw that the industry was facing this antibiotic challenge and that they had been using the same weapons for that challenge, that were basically vegetable extracts. And those vegetable extracts have some efficacy, but what they do, there are things that are not originally from the salmon, that salmon is not used to eat. So when you eat something that promotes, boosts immunity, you get inflammation first. You get inflammation, and that's the first thing that your organism does. And then it regulates, and then it starts getting, regulating immunity. So what they saw is like, well, they're using these weapons that are not delivering the ideal effect. So they said, okay, why don't we imitate nature? Why don't we use something that already exists in the fish?
Can I just stop you there? Well, why is inflammation important? Like, for somebody that isn't familiar, they'll think, well, okay, so what?
Well,
You know?
The immune system has
Yeah.
different mechanisms to work. Like you have inflammatory processes and anti-inflammatory processes. They're both important, and the inflammation is the first one that gets triggered. Let's say when you cut your finger and you get an infection, and first, like, it's all red.
Yeah.
Right? It's like kind of the more basic way of your organism to protect you. It protects you, in a very kind of, get out of here, like getting, soil and red. And so it's a very important tool, but it's like a primitive tool. It's like, like the first part of the mechanism, and the more general. And then you get another anti-inflammatory and more specific ways to fight that infection. And those other more sophisticated ways are the smarter ways, because like, okay, we identified what it is. We'll send the messenger to kill that specific thing, or something that, to mitigate that problem. But first of all, it's like, like close everything,
Yeah.
And what we've done is find a way, the protein from the fish, that activates that smarter way to fight infections. Not just the hammer, but kind of,
Like a very specific.
the very specific things that make that infection improve in very fast.
And this is something that the fish, the salmon specifically in this case, would produce themselves normally.
Yeah, they would produce themselves in a lower quantity. So they have a lower quantity. So what we do is that same protein that they have to fight against this infection, we give it a little bit more of that. So they get primed. They are prepared to face infection.
Can the same technology be applied to other forms of aquaculture or even animal farming?
Definitely, yeah. What we created is an AI and bioinformatic platform to replicate this technology with other species. So the idea is like we are working with animal farming, but we are starting with salmon in this case and aquaculture, then going to tilapia and to shrimp. We already developed an MVP for shrimp. So in the next week, I'm going to Vietnam and Singapore with a program, with an accelerator program called CREST from Hatch Blue Fund. That's one of our investors. And there we are going to meet with the shrimp industry in Vietnam and Singapore.
Fantastic. I know you probably can't go into much detail, but just out of curiosity, is it still triggering the same protein, or is it a different protein?
Shrimp has, let's say, almost no immune system, like a very primitive immune system. So we have to identify very different proteins, like that does different things, compared to fish that are very much similar to other animals in terms, like much evolved in terms of their immunity system.
Yeah. So every time you switch species, you have to find the different key to open.
Exactly. That's a very good analogy, a different key. But so the biotechnology, the bioinformatic and AI platform it's kind of, it's a trained platform in which we train it with information from different species. But in some way it's agnostic, because you could even develop products for humans once you get that platform trained. because it doesn't care what you put into, as long as as long as it is well trained to understand what it works.
Yeah. As you were talking, I was thinking, would something like this have been possible without AI?
No. Bioinformatic, it's important, but what AI gives is it's a different speed.
Okay.
For
So how long would
this.
would something like this take without AI? We're talking like a
Like
decade.
10 years, yeah.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, basically it's the speed which we do things, because you can do, but you have to, what you do is like test. You have like, I don't know, let's say 100 or 200, like the typical like development of molecules in medicine.
Yeah.
You have lots of molecules and you have to test them all. But you can't avoid, you couldn't avoid all that testing part. And so you had to invest millions and millions of dollars and then obtain, after 10 years, one molecule that works. But now, because of bioinformatic and because of AI, that process is speed.
Yeah.
Because like you try in silico, that's with the computer. So it's
Like a simulation.
That's a simulation. So you simulate that, and you know that you can shorten that search, I don't know, from 100 to 4.
Wow.
So then you do the trials for those 4 just, and you select one candidate.
And it's not just time and speed, but it'll be cost as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because that time, in fact, time translates into costs in that case. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna switch gear. I think we covered everything in terms of the science. Your mission is one that people immediately find compelling. If you, especially if you care about the ocean, or people that are interested in environmental and climate solutions, and even I suppose the general public, if you explain that the overuse of antibiotics kill people, a solution that means we don't have to use antibiotics sounds great. However, those are not the people that you are selling to, right? So my question is, what makes your solution compelling to salmon farmers and by extension, fish farmers or animal farmers?
But I think that we get to avoid antibiotics, but in a cost-effective way. We are not making them spend more money. So I think that that's part of the trick, like at least some of them might be interested in doing something innovative, trying something different. But in the end, we don't deliver that in a way that integrates smoothly with their objectives that are basically producing at the lowest possible cost, we're not going to be successful. We know that. So what we are doing is doing it in the most efficient way possible.
So you're providing the same outcome or a similar outcome, no additional cost.
Exactly.
But they don't have to. Like there's nothing pushing a salmon farmer to adopt something like this, meaning using antibiotics is perfectly legal at this stage?
It's legal in some countries. In the case of Chile, for example, it's legal. Even bats, but they have to inform it. They have to inform how much antibiotics they have used. So in that reports, they got what's called the antibiotic consumption index. It's how much antibiotics they've used per, I think it's per kilo, per ton of fish.
Okay.
And they want to reduce that.
Why?
Because there is a reputational risk.
Right.
And most of the salmon farmers are part of this antibiotic reduction program. They participate, so they're eagerly trying to reduce that because of the reputation, and because of that unlocks other markets that are closed for them, or they don't get to differentiate the product, because once they use antibiotics. So they have that pressure, and they know that after there's kind of a threshold, let's say roughly when fish are more than, let's say, 2 kilos or 3 kilos, the amount of antibiotics that you need to use will make that index rocket. It will get very, very large. So they want to prevent that. So our product works as a way of preventing that, because there's something called the withdrawal period. There, like at least 1 to 2 months before harvesting the fish, you can't use antibiotics, because if not, there's going to be a residue.
And that's dictated by regulation.
That's it, dictated by regulations, and that's depending on the country. There's regulations, or at least there's going to be some analysis for that, and that will prevent the fish to get into some certain markets. For example, we have an antibiotic called oxytetracycline, and that has for several months, more than 1 month, like let's say 3 months or more, you find residues of that antibiotic. So they try to avoid it. It's very effective because antibiotics are effective, but they have residues, and almost 80% of them go into the water, because like the fish, the feed goes into the water. So what you do is you give our product in this moments before harvest, and it protects the fish, so you are not at risk of having these infections and having to use antibiotics, or harvesting the fish early. That means they are not able to gain the weight you need them to gain, so you are losing millions of dollars because of that. So I don't know if I
No, absolutely.
answered the question.
Yes, and just for clarity, so your product goes in the feed as well as antibiotics?
Yes.
So in the same way, I mean, same.
Our product is a feed additive.
Yeah, and antibiotics are also a feed?
I also they go in the feed. So yeah, that's why when you get something into the feed, you have to be very careful on the impact it has on the environment, because the main reason why we shouldn't use antibiotics in animal farming has to do with antibiotic resistance.
Why is that a problem?
Because currently 2 million people die for antibiotic resistance each year. And it's predicted that in 2030, in only 5 years, it will kill more people than cancer. So antibiotic resistance is something, like almost as climate change, those things that are happening slowly and silently, but not climate change, not as silently as it used to, and you don't realize, but it's having a terrible impact. And there are people, for example, that has infections that need at least 1 year or 2 years to be cured, like pneumonia or something like that kind of diseases.
Because the antibiotics are not working, not doing
Because what you do is you use antibiotics and you overuse it. And what you do is strain bacteria, because the bacteria that survive to those antibiotics are the superbugs, the super resistant bacteria. And what we are now doing is populating the world with like super bacteria, like superbugs they're called. And those bugs are very dangerous, and they are the ones that are sometimes even it's particularly worrisome for children, because you have less mature immune systems, You can see that in hospitals as well, like chronic infections, and you have bacteria that's very hard to kill. And most of the physicians are at least the most informed ones, are at least 6 months behind the innovation in terms of research. So you can go perfectly today to a doctor and get prescribed an antibiotic, and it wouldn't work. And you get back and they don't. So you have to, to try to pray that they get the
right one,
before something very bad happens. When I'm telling this, I'm finding all over the world people that are approaching me and telling me their own experiences with this. It's not something that's kind of, headlines.
Yeah, no, it's not really. It's very silent. Going back to your customers, how did you go about deepening your understanding of the problem that you are solving for fish farmers?
What I did is went to the facilities and talked to the farmers, basically, and talked to them, to the production manager, to the health manager, to each one of the people involved in the production, and try to understand which are the challenges they're facing. And basically what they want to do is they want to be as work in the best way possible, and to be as efficient as they can. And sometimes they want to try things, but they have to be aware of the cost of the things, because if not, like the cost efficiency will be a problem. So they're always trying to balance and juggle all these things at the same time. But what I see is like all these worries, that are interconnected. So it's a very complex system in which you have to intervene with something that works for everyone. That's what I learned. And I see that they are eager to work with new things, as long as you are not disrupting, that way of working.
Have you found that there's anything that keeps them up at night? I know that you are very eager to make your customers' life simpler and more and calmer.
Yeah, well, of course, an infection. In the case of Chile, they keeps them up night, like SRS infection. Is there going to be an infection? Is there going to be any health issue that will, infect fish and will make, for example, one whole facility? We're talking about 1 million fish
in one facility, in
one
farm.
facility, one farm. Like.
So the cost of an infection taking over.
Yeah, you can imagine, like, if they are 1 kilo, they could be like at farm gate cost, let's say $4 million.
Wow.
When they're 1 kilo, they could be 4 kilos.
And you can't control that.
Yeah, you could talk about $20 million, that they're there at the sea. And you can of course, I think, and that impacts in the profitability of the whole, the company, but also on the performance, because if they got all those, fish infected, it's a huge problem. They will have to harvest them faster, get them a lower weight. So yeah, it's a big problem for them.
Well, you think it's important to really look at the stress and the pain of your customer?
Because they are the ones who will decide if we are successful, basically. If we don't understand what they need, and if we don't deliver what they need at the cost that they need, okay, we won't be able to it's not going to happen. They're not going to adopt. So when you work with something, when you innovate in something, it's very common that you say, okay, I have the best product, the most innovative, like the coolest product in the world, And that in the end, you find that people are looking for your product, not some of them maybe because it's innovative and cool, and like let's say the technophilic ones, but most
at the beginning, the early adopters.
Exactly, the early adopters will think, okay, yeah,
let's try it out.
Yeah, let's try that. It's interesting, sounds cool. Yeah. But if you don't deliver results in a way that's cost effective for them, you won't get that thing to grow. You're not going to get adoption. So if you don't understand it fast and you fall in love with your solution, you have a problem, because we're kind of, you will be living kind of in a dream, and you say, like, you have to adopt my product because it's so cool. We have the best science ever, like, you have to make it work, basically. So yeah, you have to think very deep into which are the problems they have and how can you solve them. But of course, for a startup at early stage, you are still working on the solution and how to develop. So it's also an equilibrium in thinking of the customer, but at the same time developing the product.
Yes, and it's very easy to get stuck looking only at the solution and developing the solution, and then you get out of the bubble and you realize nobody cares.
Exactly.
Yeah. You think that selling and customer development are underestimated skills in ocean and impact entrepreneurship?
Part of the answer to your question has to do with what Redex, the biotech accelerator, does. They know that they have what they call the entrepreneurs, and most like scientific entrepreneurs are like people that have a solution in search of a problem.
Right.
So they are, people that say, I have the best solution. I know what to do, what to make, but I don't know what is it for, but
but it's super cool.
It's super cool. I have this thing, and they're looking for something where to apply that. And the application is a kind of secondary from the discovery itself. Even though when you get inside of the academic world, they think of themselves as very concrete people because they're applying their science to something. There's a lot of more thousands of steps more to get really close to the problem. It's a very general thing, a general application. Yeah. So yeah, I believe that thing happens in biotech, definitely. And ocean, yeah, like many entrepreneurs that are, their solution is like tech based, and they have a lot of focus on the solution in itself. But in the end, quite quickly you understand in this process that if you are not able to demonstrate market fit and that someone that's really willing to buy your product, you are going to die. Like you have to find someone that's willing at least to try your product. Let's say to sell it is the second part, but at least to try. But I think that, yeah, that's kind of a wall that most of the projects hit at some time. Like you can be kind of, very, very early stage and working on the development, but at some point you have to go out of the world and try to convince someone that you are delivering something that's useful for them.
Do you feel that there's any misconceptions around that, around sales and marketing?
I think that it depends where, because let's say in the scientific realm, yeah, definitely. It's like selling your soul, like the idea of like the real science or the pure science, like you're within academy. And when you
And we'll never do that.
We'll never, like I'm going to sell my soul there, and it's interesting because I have like one foot on the culture management world. And I'm a professor at a master. And when I teach economics of culture.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize I was talking to a professor.
and then I give like 2 courses. One it's called economics of culture, and one it's like project management. And I kind of teach my class how to pitch. And we have then a demo day, but they come from culture projects. And in the first class, they kind of are very, very uncomfortable, like with this idea of we are working with art, we're working with culture. And like, why are you talking about money?
Yeah.
So there's a very, very high tension between money and art and culture. And the idea of like the artist that sold him or herself, when they start selling. So it's very similar to the things that I find in the science world.
Do you think there's anything that could be done to close this gap? Do you have any advice for ocean entrepreneurs?
Just to try to understand, to think of the problem. What is the problem that you are solving? And try to meet someone that is going to use your product and will need your product. And trying to understand and have like exercise like radical empathy.
All right. Nice.
Like put in the feet of the person that will need your product and think why they will be willing to use it and what are the problems and the kind of questions that you asked me that are not simple because maybe you had that idea, but that idea had to do with the things that you know and the things that you were used to, but you were never in that place and maybe you don't care. So you have to care about their problems and make their problems their own.
I like that. This could be a dead end. I'll ask you anyway, very quickly. Do you think that ocean entrepreneurs are less likely to seek help when it comes to sales and marketing, say to an agency or hiring dedicated people in-house than other sectors? Do you think there's like a reluctance in seeking help and getting those resources?
What I see is that ocean entrepreneurs, let's say more than aquaculture, ocean are very passion-driven and has a very strong sense of purpose. I found that more than compared to the digital let's say I share some space and now community with entrepreneurs that come from more the digital space, let's say, blockchain or whatever, like apps and crypto. And what I see is that they are very focused on fixing a work problem that has to do with impact. And sometimes they don't know how to align that impact with money, let's say, to getting, to making that profitable, to make that happen. Because sometimes I think the hardest thing when your objective has to do with impact is to align it with profitability and to make it possible. And I think that's the problem with all like nature-based solutions and like lots of solutions that are looking for impact. They don't know how to make it work financially, and okay, I want this, but yeah, how also, because, well, it's a very deep problem that has to do with capitalism, and it has to do with when you have public goods such as, well, the sea is a public good, the air is a public good. So you have that governance problem in which you have an impact, you have negative externalities, but nobody's paying for that. So when you have that problem, you want to do good for that, but nobody's paying because nobody owns that. Nobody's paying for the good things that you are doing. So and I think the carbon markets, are a way to try to capture that. And there's lots of financial instruments that are that are being built, to bridge that gap.
To get somebody to pay someone.
To get somebody to pay for that positive impact that you are making with your product. But I think that's the thing that prevents them to think in terms of money, because they're obsessed with this purposeful impact.
What do you think is the antidote for that?
The antidote for that, I think, running out of money, it's one of them. We hope that it happens before. But I think that will be exposing them, to the reality of the thing, that if you want to show them, I don't know, if I were just to do a workshop, I would show like all those amazing projects that didn't work because they didn't have they couldn't make money. Say, okay, you want to be successful, you want to have impact, you have to find a way to finance that. If not, it would be just a nice dream.
Yeah. Do you think that goes back to what you were saying earlier of finding a customer, finding what they are really scared about, stressed about?
Definitely.
And help somebody.
Definitely. And I think that in this ocean space, you have to be much more creative, because sometimes you have to create a business model that's completely different from the typical business model in which you sell a product to someone and you get paid for that. You have to think like you have lots of stakeholders there that you have to think about, and maybe the stakeholder that it's going to pay for that impact is not the same that you are working with. It's a third party that's selling, I don't know, carbon,
Yeah, it's way more complex, and there's a lot more variables.
Yeah, you have to think. It's more complex how to get money from that.
Yeah, I think we could talk about this for hours and hours. I wanted to ask you something about Latin America, because Aquit is based in Latin America, Chile and Argentina, but you're clearly building with a global vision, right? You are, as I understand it, already expanding in the US, or looking to expand in the US. You presented at a UN conference, you're networking at international events. What does it mean to you to be a Latin American startup in the ocean biotech space?
Well, being an American startup means, first of all, being at an ecosystem that is growing, has grown like 4 times in the last 20 years in terms of the amount of investments. That's great in the sense that you feel that you are something in an industry that's booming, in a sense. It's growing. At the same time, Latin America, it's seen still as a very, let's say, primitive ecosystem in terms of venture capital. When you have to sell your project, I'm talking about the company, to US investors or European investors, where most of the money is basically of venture capital. Say, so it's a challenge. It's a challenge basically because you have to convince, you have one layer more. It's not only
An extra barrier.
yeah, an extra barrier. It's not only the project, it's a project that's far from the investors. They are not going to be able to see what you're doing and walk into your lab and watch what you're doing. And there is a cultural barrier as well, because Latin America is very different in several ways to the US. In some way, in the particular case of Argentina, we have some kind of tie or connection with Europe because most of us are European descendants. So there's at least a part of Mediterranean, Europe there. Let's say Italy and Spain is ingrained some way in our culture, but we are Argentinian. It's different animal, let's say. And it's a challenge, but at the same time, I think we are better prepared in terms of resilience. When I started the conversation, I told you about, like the cyclical crisis. We know that things are not linear, and we know that there are going to be setbacks. Once something goes wrong, we just change it or do something to fix it and go on. And that's something that I think that's a subset of qualities that's quite unique compared to other parts of the world. And I think we are really much more resilient compared to the US and European entrepreneurs that way.
Do you think, to a certain extent, if you can survive here, if you can make it here, then you can make it
like
anywhere?
New York, like the song.
Yes,
You can make it
exactly.
you can make it anywhere.
Yeah.
If you can make it in Argentina and Chile and Latin America, you can make it anywhere. Yeah, and of course you have to learn about, and it's something that I really enjoy that part of my work. Getting to know people from all over the world, getting to know the tiny differences in terms of the type of culture. A Latin American, it's called a high context culture. There are lots of things that are inferred, and it's not polite to say a plain no. And in some countries like Mexico, it's very unpolite to say no. So if you have to, for example, get from the context that they're saying no to you.
Sounds very British.
Sorry, it sounds
Sounds very British.
Yeah, a little bit, but there's something polite about British, but at the same time, the UK and the like northern of Europe and the US, it's a very kind of low context culture. They kind of say things. Okay, are we clear? Okay, A, B, and C and D. So sometimes it could be harsh, but in terms of talking to Latin America, that difference of culture. So you have to understand those nuances when you're talking to a customer, to an investor, all that. And I love that part, but sometimes it's very challenging. Even within Latin America, you have those differences.
As in like internal differences.
Yeah, you have differences with Mexico, for example, and I told you that's much more a traditional country in some way. And at some point that I could feel sometimes more connection with the Mexican and the Japanese, in terms of, the kind of what the things have to be said or can't be said. And then, I don't know, people from Uruguay or Brazil, that are much more, and well, this flexibility that we have. Yeah, but the culture is something that you have to take into account when making business as well. Yeah,
Absolutely. I don't know if you have an answer for this, but I'll ask you. What is your strategy at the moment for scaling into the US market?
Yeah, basically we're not scaling yet at the US market. What we are doing now is working with pilots in Chile. The next step will be we have some pilots in Norway that are hopefully being done next year. And the idea is to then go to Scotland, work with shrimp industry in Ecuador, in Asia. US is relevant for us, but it's not the largest market yet. It's a very important place to be in terms of the venture capital ecosystem. Not itself in terms of a
Deployment.
market, in
Yeah,
terms of
of the
deployment,
project.
because compared to other countries, the market is not as big.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't know if I shared that. I'd love to share something about the work with gender that I've been
Yeah,
doing.
that was going to be my next question.
Oh, okay.
Go for it.
No, that I share with you that when I worked at the Ministry of Culture in Argentina in 2007, I edited and published the first guidebook for women in Argentina. And that book was very impactful since many women from all around the country got to read about like gender and their rights, and they divorced from the husbands, like identifying like gender violence, and basically that they were, having problems in that physical violence, let's say. And since that moment, that changed my life in terms of the knowing that just writing something in a book, editing and giving it to someone that was not expecting that because they were not demanding those books, that made a significant impact. So I decided that I fell in love with this idea of there's an inequality here. There's something that's going on, and you can do a lot just working on the awareness of that. And I was part of the Council for Women, National Council for Women in Argentina, the board. And then I always try to do some kind of side project regarding this. In 2024, when I entered the Women in Ocean Food program,
Yeah, which is how we connected.
I understood that there in this space there's also an opportunity to work with gender, and that Hatch had made it possible, and connected me with lots of very, very interesting women and very powerful women. So, and there I decided that I wanted to do something, and I wanted to understand what. And in that journey, I saw that there were several projects like Women in Ocean Food and with Hatch and Conservation International Ventures, and like Tool 500 that works in Norway with this curated list of women in the blue economy with BIGinBIO. And there are lots of, not say lots, but several initiatives that had to do with supporting women, bringing more women, to the ecosystem, to the blue economy. But what I saw as well is that I saw some bias throughout the investments, let's say, pipeline, and for example, networking is very hard when you're a woman in very male-dominated ecosystems. Because I encountered, this situation in which I went into an event in which there were 200 men and 5 women. And I was okay, like it happened to me in Miami. Okay, how can I network here? It's very hard.
Do you feel that it's industry specific or quite?
It's even worse in the digital ecosystem, because you have like 99% men and 1% women. Let's say in the blue economy is a little bit less terrible because you have a little bit more women. And in the blue economy, that is the space that I'm in now, I saw that as well. And I saw that sometimes, even like, someone from goes, having lunch or with other guys, and, that dynamic that happens, and you are outside of it, you become excluded. And it's not that being a good or good person or a bad person, it's kind of the systemic dynamic. And then when you evaluate early stage products, you evaluate, and as investors say, they evaluate the team. They evaluate they believe in the team as it's a solid team, how are they built as a team. So it's very difficult to have let's say, a blind audition when you don't care if they're women or men. So in that case, what happens is that you have that's called like the identification bias. Like you want to invest in people that are like you, think like you, ideally from your own culture, ideally from your own gender. So in that case, when you do that, you systematically, without being a mean person, let's say, you are excluding. It's very hardwired. And there's a very interesting experiment that has been done with Philharmonic Orchestra. They wanted to have more women, and they didn't know how to get the women in. So they did these auditions, and they were blind, and the women played and the men played behind, this they couldn't be seen. And they saw that it didn't change the outcome, and they were wondering why. And they figured out that the steps of the heels were being heard. So they put some carpets and they erased the difference. So that level of subconsciousness is that. So everybody wants to be kind of a good person, or say a thing that's okay. No, I'm not biased. It's impossible that you're not biased, because you have to put a carpet there, even like the best ones, there's the ones that are really willing to get more women there. And these people weren't to get more women, but they were influenced by that heels that they were listening to, but they didn't remember hearing the heels.
So almost like a subconscious.
And then it's a bias. It's not like open discrimination that I've heard of, because I had a colleague which I mentored with, and he was from a very big company in Argentina, and he told me, yeah, when we got the CVs from women, we put them apart, because they told me, yeah, but not they were, because they didn't thought of them as that people, but because we're all men, we're more comfortable together, and they will disturb us. It would be better, just to keep them outside, because it's easier, and that kind of things, it sounds quite naive in a way, but that kind of things are the things that stop women from working, and from, having more opportunities, and to getting we are born with the same exact brain. But the thing is that there's systemic bias, I'm not talking about discrimination. I'm talking about this thing that we can't control.
Yeah.
And what I thought is, okay, how can we come with something that attacks the systemic bias? Some kind of a tool for that. And what we created with other partners from United States and the UK is an organization that's kind of still nascent, that's called Themis Fractal. It's like kind of a fractal of justice. That's the idea. And what we are working on is a survey with the Smithsonian Institute to identify those bias with VCs, and then to build tools to limit those bias, to approach as much as we come to that blind audition with the carpets.
Okay, so you're figuring out all the different carpets
Exactly.
that you can put out.
How we could put carpet everything, everywhere.
That's fascinating. You can take this wherever you want. It could be around gender, but it could be more generic. What's one piece of advice that you wish someone had given you in the past?
That it always takes more time than you would think.
I like that. I like that. Professor Allerbon.
Thank you so much. No.
Before we wrap this up, is there something that you feel is particularly important to you that we haven't talked about?
My childhood, was like therapy.
I mean, we've got time.
No.
As a communication expert, you know better than anyone how important it is to do good communication around the topics that we talked about, inform people, engage people. Is there any resource, like a website, a book, organization that you'd like to recommend people, point people to? Any book, any website, any particular resource?
There's a book called Reinventing Organizations from Frédéric Laloux. That's a French anthropologist that used to work for McKinsey. And he wrote this book about kind of how organizations are historically evolving, and there are some type of organizations that he tells that's kind of the more evolution one, that's called the teal organizations. And those organizations are very horizontal, and they work like fractals, in terms of small groups of people. And this idea that you bring your whole self to the organization, like holistic, mindset, and at the same time, like, you don't put a mask to go to work. It's you're your own self, and you're responsible for all the outcomes, and you manage things manage all the variables, within those groups that are quite flexible. And I love the kind of the mindset behind that, and I try as much as we can to build the organizations I build, and having that framework into account.
Nice. We'll put that in the show notes for sure. That sounds really interesting. Thanks so much for having me in this lovely venue. I had a really good time talking to you.
Thank you, really.
And all the best for your trip to Singapore next week.